Today on the show, we search for lost loved ones, reunite with old friends, and start down a path to discover who we are. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and themes behind some of our favorite universes. I'm Jaden.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is a very special episode because it starts our coverage of the Disney Plus series, ANDOR.
Yeah, I am very, very, very excited for this one. This is the first episode, and there's going to be some aesthetic themes as well as the beginning of understanding who Cassian is before leaving his homeworld and how he's thrown into his role in the Resistance. Like this whole episode, it's kind of like falls into it. So this is going to be the first episode, and it's already a wild ride.
It's kind of great. If you guys haven't already, please listen to our first episode on this series. This is kind of like a prequel, episode 0 kind of thing. I thought it was pretty good. And I think it's going to test the knowledge that we had on him, because I think the show already has started exploring some other things that might not line up with the known canon that we had known beforehand. Or maybe not. We'll see. We'll get into that discussion a little later.
Yeah, so the way this episode is, and moving forward and everything, the way these are going to go is we are going to do a brief synopsis coverage of the episode with some sprinkled in fun lore and analysis and stuff.
We're going to try to keep it brief, but if you listen to our Obi-Wan coverage, you know that those can go on a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And then we're going to go into more detail a little bit after that on kind of how we feel about the episode as well as what we hope to see in the future.
Absolutely. And before we get into it, let's do a little housekeeping, which is how you guys can get involved. We love to hear from our listeners, so please email us at podcast@loreparty.com with your thoughts and questions, and you might just see them appear on future episodes. You can find Kevin at IN_the_LUPE on Twitter, and you can find him on Twitch at K_LOOPZ.
And you can find Jaden over here on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. JADJAY. And of course, you can connect with the Lore Party team on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at lore_party.
Absolutely. Now, before we dive in, if you haven't listened to our episode 0 discussion of ANDOR on Disney Plus yet, it's time to pause and go listen to that. And if you haven't watched the whole episode itself, go ahead and watch that and then come back, because we don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay, so now that we've officially warned you
it's
all
right. Yep, we're done.
Let's get into it.
Let's get on to the news. I don't know what that is. That's something.
All right, so we're going to start this episode with Cassian already hanging out, walking on a pier from a starport to a city, and on the planet Morlana 1. Now, Morlana 1 is a corporate-owned planet, so you have all these planets that are owned by corporations, and they kind of have workers, and they could own a system, and one planet could be the headquarters, the other planet could be the mining operation, the other planet
subsidiary organization.
Yeah, so this is the corporate headquarters kind of owned planet. And he goes to the city, and he arrives in typical Star Wars fashion at a bar. Everybody's always going to a bar.
There's a lot of bars in Star Wars, I noticed, which is why it's always funny when people tell me it's a kid's show. I'm like, oh well, I don't know. You're encouraging drinking and then also sex apparently in this episode.
Yes, this is a special bar. This is a brothel. Oh,
yep.
Okay, there you go. And this bar is kind of usually busier. They comment on how, it's usually busier, but tonight it's not. So Cassian gets to be in there, and it's a little bit easier for Cassian to get attention from the hostess.
Which backfires on him a little bit later.
It does backfire. He's spoken to 2 security guards. They're hanging out at the bar themselves. They're kind of trying to chum him up and crack some jokes, but also kind of tease him a little bit. And he's like, yeah, cool, whatever, guys.
He doesn't seem to take he doesn't take their attitude, because they're used to the guys who live on this planet, bowing down whenever a security guard walks in. But he's just kind of like, what? What do you want from me? Shut up. I'm busy.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. And they're like, well, you're disrespecting us.
Pretty much. And the hostess comes in, And these security guards are like, what the hell? Like, we've been here longer. What the hell? We've been sitting here, just got here. And she's like, you'll get your turn kind of thing. And it's kind of, it kind of causes some problems.
Yep.
They get a little tiffed.
So when he's talking to the girl, he's saying like, hey, do you know of anybody special that I could talk to? And she's like, well, what are you looking for? And he goes, I'm looking for a Canary girl. And she goes to check, and she comes back and says that there was a girl who was from Canary, but she left a couple of months ago. And she's like, what are you, a husband, a boyfriend? And he's like, no, that's my sister. And she's like, you gotta go, dude. I ain't here for that.
She does seem concerned, though. She definitely looks at him and is like, oh, like her demeanor completely changes when he says sister. And she's like, okay, she left. Like, she's not here.
Yeah, she's like, she's just like, you gotta go. Like, you're not getting anything out of here. Like, go, just leave.
Yeah, don't waste your time. She's already like, yeah, dude. So after leaving, he makes his way back through the previous route that he was, we saw a little bit earlier.
Yep.
And he realizes all of a sudden he's being followed. And you could kind of tell he's like walking through the hallway or the alleyway or whatever. And he's kind of you could see it in his face. He starts slowing down a bit. And yeah. And then you hear it. Then you hear the security guards yelling at him. And one of them, they're going through a list of things like, oh, you should, show your Corpo ID when asked. You should make sure you're not parked in this area.
We have to impound your ship, and we have to do a processing fee, and you're going to be locked up for a couple of days while we sort this whole thing out.
Yeah, they're going over a complete list of just shit. They're trying to harass and basically just extort
Clearly
him.
very corrupt cops.
Yeah, and they basically try to extort him, and one of them pulls out a weapon and puts it up to his head, and Cassian's like, well, I have 300 credits, like, just here, take them, they're in my pocket. And they're like, oh, that's plenty to cover all of this, plus our personal fee of, blah, blah, blah. And they're just full of shit. These guys
He knows
are
they're
jerks.
robbing him. He knows they're robbing him.
Yeah.
So, but he does play kind of smart. He plays it kind of smart because he goes, they're like, oh, well, give us the money. He goes, I don't want any surprises, please. You just reach into my pocket and I'll let you grab it.
Yep.
And as one of the guards goes to grab it, he does an awesome, like, spin move. And he knocks one guard to the ground and then starts wrestling with the gun. He slams the guy to the ground, like knocks the gun out of his hand, and then puts the gun in there, and then he starts, it's kind of like a moment of like catharsis for him because he's like, yelling at him and like being like, oh yeah, you're the big tough guy? Well, I got the gun. Like, get up. Like, come on. Yep. Grab your buddy. Get up. Like, now I have the power. It's
pretty badass.
It's really cool. And like, you get the feeling that Cassian's been like trod upon by people like these guys for a majority of his life. Yeah. And the guy's like, the one guy's like, okay. And he reached over to grab his buddy. And then he realizes that in the fight, that guy died. He cracked his head.
Hit his head or whatever, and he died.
And
that's, that's not great. The situation does not call for anybody to die now, and he's got to kind of figure out what to do. The guard that's alive, he's pleading for his life and says, we can go to the station together. We'll tell them what happened. Makes up a story. Oh, we were roughhousing. We were doing this. He's like basically pleading for his life. Yep. And Cassian just walks over and just boom, point blank, boom, right in the head. And then he just runs and books it to his ship.
What a great way to set the tone for this episode. Like, we always knew Cassian was, from Rogue One, we knew he was like willing to commit murder, right? But this is like murder. But this is like early in his career. We even see where it says like BBY 5, which, by the way, BBY 5 means before Battle of Yavin, but they worded it so fucking weird because it used to be 5 BBY, which made sense 5 years before Battle of Yavin. Now it's like before Battle of Yavin 5, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Why would you do it that way, Disney? But that's we'll get to that later. We cut to the planet Ferrix, and Cassian's waking up from like a nap. Clearly, he made it away from the planet, and he's sleeping in like this old blown up ship. And this beat up droid named B2 EMO, which, by the way, he's a fucking fantastic character. All the new characters they've introduced in the show are fantastic.
I thought it was funny because it kind of reminded me of B2 Emo.
Yeah.
I just was like, it's
which is
B-emo.
very fitting to his character too.
Yeah.
The running gag is that these droids don't take any of Cassian's shit because he reminds me of Eeyore a little bit, and he just goes into the ship.
That's a good way of actually pretty good.
He's Eeyore, he really is, and it's kind of cool because like you find out later like he's kind of glitchy and like kind of old, which I love that idea. Is that he's just an old beat up droid.
Yeah. So basically, B2 Emo, makes its way to Cassian, who's on the outskirts of town in a broken like ship, and he's sleeping. And we cut all of a sudden to the past, and we see children surviving on the planet Kenari. Clearly, Cassian as a kid. That's what it's giving you off, and you see him hanging out with a little girl, his sister. And we see all these children, kind of like, it reminds me of Lord of the Flies, so Lord of the Flies kind of situation, where they're...
That's what, he wrote that in the script, and I laughed, because that's exactly
I did. I really did. It really reminded me of that. So yeah, so they see a Republic ship crash. Now, I'm not saying this is a Republic ship where it's a Republic vessel, like there's clones and stuff, but it's during the time of the Republic, so it is considered a Republic ship.
We'll get into that. I have thoughts, but we'll get into that.
I know. I definitely know you do. The ship crash lands and explodes and everything, and clearly these children have been here for a while. You can see that they have a lot of gear. They're very dirty. They've have like tree houses and stuff built. They've been there for a bit. Yep. And then as soon as the ship crashes, we cut.
Yep, and it cuts to B2 Emo. That's how I'm just going to call him that now. He's talking to Cassian, and he's like, hey, a lot of people were looking for you, but they couldn't find you because he was off-world. Mm-hmm. And Cassian's like, hey, the next time someone asks about me, just lie, okay? I need you to lie about where I was, and I need you to lie about what I was doing. And it's so funny because he just goes, that's two things.
Yeah,
like,
he's like, I need you to tell one line. He's like, no, that's two.
That's two lies.
Yeah, and before Cassian leaves for the bell, because he hears like this bell, it sounds like a bell. That comes in later, by the way. He hears this like bell, and he helps clean up B2 Emo, because B2 Emo's got like some crap in them, and obviously, they got pee on them. And the droid is really sad. It can't, it's not allowed to accompany him, and Cassian's like, stay here. And Cassian then makes his way to what seems to be like a work detail, like entrance area. There's all these gloves like on a wall, which I thought was really cool. They're pretty much like BMX gloves. I thought that was really cool. He meets his friend Brasso, I think it's Brasso. And basically, Brasso's like, where were you last night? I was looking for you. And Cassian just makes up a whole story about how they were going out and they were going to hang out. And he's like, yeah, and we went to the bar, but the bar was not that great and it was kind of closing and stuff and it was late. So we went to my house. We went to your house. You had some liquor or whatever. We hung out. I insulted your liquor brand. You punched me in the face and now we're fine. And like this whole story.
Which clearly shows that this is not the first time they've had to make up a story like this. So
yup. And it's a pretty good alibi, to be honest. And Brasso just stands there and is like, yep.
Yep.
He's just like, yep.
He's like, we've clearly done this before, so I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even ask like where he was. He's like, well, all right, so this is what we're doing. And by the way, don't you owe me money?
Yeah. It was very, very funny.
And like, so immediately after that, we then cut to Morlana 1 again, but this time, it's actually at the corporate security headquarters, and we get introduced to like, I love this character already. It's the first scene I've seen him in. His name is Cyril Karn, and he's an officer. And he's presenting his findings about the murder that we witnessed at the beginning of the episode. And he's reading off. He's reading off, and it's the main thing they have to go on is that a human with dark features was asking about a Kenari girl. And the chief security officer, he's like impressed. He's like, "Oh wow, you did a good investigation," which is why we're not gonna tell anyone. He's like, he immediately goes into like, He's like, "So who are these guys?" And he looks up, and like, honestly. The chief's like, oh, these two are corrupt fucking scumbags. He's like, I know this guy. He's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I know this guy. And he's like, and then the little guy, what's his name? Karn is like excited. Karn's like, oh, you do know the CIA. This is why I wanted to make sure you knew. And he goes, yeah, he was an asshole. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, it's so funny because like the chief, like I know that what he's saying is technically wrong by the rules of the law, but the chief is right. He literally calls it word for word. He's like, these two got drunk, tried to rough up the wrong person, and he got them.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, he got it nailed it on the head.
He's like, these guys were clearly in the wrong. Like, I know these guys are bad. And Karn's like, but sir, they're fellow security officers. And he's like, listen, as long as we make it look like we're providing law and order, then the Empire will not come down upon us. He's like,
leave them alone.
It's way better for us and our bottom line if the Empire thinks that this was just like an accident. So make up like something. I love. He says, make them look like they died doing something heroic, nothing too heroic, but heroic enough that no one will ask questions. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And so then we cut back to Cassian. Now, Cassian is going to a shop. It's kind of like a junk shop. There's pretty much junk shops everywhere. This planet looks somewhat poverty-stricken, but not really because everybody's working. They're all doing something.
It's like a manufacturing planet, I want to say, but
yeah.
Think about like an auto body shop, but like the entire planet is auto body shops.
Yeah, pretty much. And so Cassian goes over to the shop, and in the shop, this guy named Tim works there. And Tim tells him, oh, you're looking for Bix? Bix is in the back. Bix is a friend of Cassian's they're working on a ship or whatever, and he interrupts her and says, hey, what's up? I need to get in touch with your contact. Your special friend, and they need to show up now. And she's like, oh, I can get him in a week, in a month. He's like, no, now. And she's like, what do you have? And he's like, I have this NS9 unit. And it's basically something from the Empire that is very rare, like mega ultra rare. And she begrudgingly kind of agrees to contact them. She's like, all right, fine, whatever. Okay, whatever. And Tim walks in, and he kind of seems like a tad jealous. He's kind of staring at both of them. And then when Cassian leaves, Cassian kind of like goes over to her and he's like, hey, is Tim, like, it looks like work. It's a little bit more than work. And she's like, oh my God, shut up, stop. And when he leaves, he's with Tim, and Tim's just like, staring at him. Tim's weird. Okay, in the beginning, I instantly got weird vibes from this guy.
Yep.
This guy is clearly jealous. He's clearly, like, jealous of their relationship. She even says, she's like, oh, well, Tim will do anything for me. Don't worry. Like, Tim will be fine. Don't worry. So already you kind of can feel like Cassian doesn't trust Tim very well, and so you shouldn't either.
Absolutely. But we don't have time for that. We have to cut back to the Lord of the Flies on Canary. It's kind of cool. The children are like getting ready to go investigate the crashed ship, and they have like this like little ritual that they start doing, which I was like, that's kind of cool. And the whole time, his sister's like, let me come with you, and he's like, no, you got to stay here. It's one of those things. Like Cassian was like, I think he was like trying to prove that he could be, like one of the warriors, like all young boys do. Where they're like, no, I'm tough, I'm strong. I don't need my sister dragging me down.
Yeah.
And one of the guys is like, nope, you don't get to join. Like, you get out here, you little kid. But then their leader, she's like, no, he can join. And Cassian's like, oh, thank you. and it's funny because he even starts to like she takes they take like mud to like mark their faces and stuff. And like the leader, like she does one like down her chin, and Cassian does the exact same markings as her. Which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. He like that. He has like a little like respect for. You wrote crush, but I'm like, I think more respect than anything else.
Yeah. And now after this scene, we go back to Karn, and the chief is left, so Karn is basically in charge.
Yep.
And Karn has clearly decided to investigate further, like the pencil-pushing asshole he is. He notices a ship leaving the planet unauthorized. It's a little bit different, and he's pretty much very much about following the rules, and he even calls out the technician, because the technician's like, bro, like, this shit happens all the time, like, we can't get every single
funny,
one.
Dude. No one cares but him. Everyone else is like...
he's such a little bitch. I'm sorry, but this guy is so annoying. He's the kid... I will talk about this later, how much I despise this guy. But yeah, so he even tells the technician who said that, he's like, work through the night, because somebody else will want your chair. Like, it basically threatens to fire him, and is like, work through the night, find out about the ship right now.
Yep. And we cut back to Cassian, and he's like walking down the street. He's clearly trying to, he's got a million things on his mind, and he gets stopped by two guys. And he owes multiple people like cash. They're like, hey man, where's my money? He's like, oh, it's in, I think he says like it's in transition or something like that. Like it's being used. And then another guy walks up to like try to intimidate him, and he's like, you're working with this guy? Seriously? And I love the big guy's just like, he just told me to stand here.
Yeah.
I was like, I love it. Cause like clearly he knows everyone in town. So like he knows what their movements are. I love that idea that he's so connected with this planet.
That's what I like. I like that everybody knows him, and he's like super charismatic, and even when they're hassling him, he can get out of it, and they're like, "Oh, Cassian!" Like they're all like, "All right."
Yep. Because I think it speaks to like they know he's a good guy. Like you owe us money, but like you're not a dick about it.
Yeah.
It's like you can get away with whatever you want as long as you're not a dick about it. Which, Han Solo to a T. Very Han Solo-esque negotiation skills.
Oh, definitely.
And while this is going on, we see Bix. She's like, "Hey, Tim, cover for me. I got to go do something real quick." And Tim's like, "What?" She's like, "I'm doing errands. I'm going to leave you." And like he starts to follow her, but then he ends up losing her because she keeps ducking around like corners and stuff, which is kind of creepy. And she ends up at her dad's shop. And she's like, "Hey, I need this specific item." And he's like, "Oh, it's in the back." And when she goes into the back, we find out that was a code phrase. So she could go climb into a radio tower and start sending Star Wars Morse code to her contact.
Yep. And then, right after that, we cut back to Karn again. And basically, he has like this control room area. And there's a group of people. And he's talking to the crew of these people. And they're like something about Ferrix. And that's obviously the planet that Cassian is on. And Karn is having some fun administering his authority. He's kind of being a dick to these people and calling them out when like he thinks that they're lazy, and he's just like very stern about everything. And these people are like, "Dude, like we don't see anything from somebody from, this planet. Like we just don't see anything here." And he's just like,
"Do you even know about Kenari? It's a backwater, dude. No one knows. No one goes there. They're fucking weird over there."
Yeah, and basically he just gives them all this shit. And he yells at all these guys, and then he yells out loud. He's like, "It was the murder of 2 employees!" And they're just like, whoa, everything just gets quiet. And they're not like, whoa, like, oh my God, somebody died. They're just like, dude, chill out.
Yeah, it's so funny. They're like, I'll talk about why I think this in a minute, but it's just such a cool moment where he's like, there's the dehumanization of it, where they're like, oh yeah, I guess he's right. 2 people did die.
Yeah. And he even then has them put a blast out, like on all channels on the entire planet, about a Kenari male.
And the episode ends with Cassian. He's like messing with the ship that he used in the beginning of the episode. He's like changing out chip logs. And every person that he's talking to so far in this episode is like, whatever, Cassian's doing his weird shady shit. It's fine. But,
yeah,
he's just like, this character is like, he's like, "Hey, can I borrow the ship one more time?" And that guy's like, "Absolutely not." Like, finally we hit a roadblock where someone's done with his shit. He's like, nope, you got to find your own way out of here. Like, man, I can't keep covering for you. We're done.
Yeah. And that's it.
And that's pretty much the episode. The episode ends with him as a kid kind of saying goodbye to his sister as he goes and joins the hunt. And that's the end of the first episode.
All right, so now that we have finished going over this episode, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with all of our thoughts. All right, so now we're back. I will say I have a lot of feelings about this episode. I don't know about you.
Oh, I do.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm not even going to take the time. I'm just jump right in. Overall, I think it was a really strong beginning to a strong series.
Yes.
The beginning scene, I personally felt was like the strongest part of the entire episode, as well as the scene with what's his name, Karn, who is, a pencil-pushing jerk. Leave it to the guy trying to enforce shitty rules who can't see the big picture to muck it up for everyone. The show is, I'd say, easy to follow. The plot plot-wise, it's easy to follow. And I really liked the themes in it. Like, I felt very, cyberpunk vibes with everything, which I really thought was really fun, especially since I just watched Edge Runners. I had a blast watching this. And I also really liked the kind of Lord of the Flies aspect, where it's like, it wasn't so technologically advanced for these kids, and I liked seeing that in this world. Mm-hmm. But yeah, overall, I think the setting and all that, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was a different side of Star Wars than we normally see. Like, normally we see more of the government-esque stuff and like the underground crime, where this is like a corporation situation with like the just overall like how this planet was a corporate-owned planet, and everybody was not necessarily in poverty like almost all these other planets are. And of course, we're not on Tatooine, which I'm fine with. But yeah, overall, I think that really helped me out. What I wasn't crazy about, I'm going to nitpick, was I wasn't crazy about the sound mixing, because a lot of the stuff was hard to hear. Like, everybody felt like they were whispering. but honestly, I kind of just think that's TV now. Like I just put subtitles on because like I'm always gonna miss something, and no, it's not my old age. Don't call me out on that. But I definitely think like after this episode, I felt like I wanted more, and I think also the pacing was mostly why I wanted more. I think the pacing was really good.
I can't disagree with you on any of those points. I think that this show has done a lot of good for Star Wars already. I think the thing that I've always said they should do with Star Wars is shrink it down. I think that Star Wars is such an interesting world and concept that it could benefit from not having every show be about a galaxy-spanning threat. I think this show, its strength is that it's a smaller scale series with characters who are not struggling against the Empire. You know, these characters aren't even concerned about the Empire. The Empire is a whole other level. You know, the big enemy for the show is this corporation and the security. You know, they're just a cog in the Imperial machine. You know, in defense of Karn and his character aspect of him, you can think about him, he's the guy that isn't even good enough to serve in the Empire. You know, maybe that's what we're going to find out later, is that he tried to join Imperial service and they rejected him. So now he's trying to be like the best member of the corporate security that he can be because he feels like he belongs at a higher level of authority. Because clearly he gives a crap about his job when nobody else does. And I feel like maybe there's a chip on his shoulder there for not being in Imperial military service, maybe. Which that might be something we get revealed later on, because he's the only one who seems to care, and everybody else seems very unmotivated to do anything. You know, they're just checking boxes, whereas he's like, no, we have to get things done. Which is going to be a very interesting dynamic, because we might be seeing, it might even be a dual role where like Karn tries to work his way into Imperial service, whereas Andor slowly works his way into Rebel service. So they might be the foil for each other going forward in future. Because I think they said they have like 5 seasons planned for this show. It was something crazy like that. Yeah,
I saw there was like 20-something episodes listed on IMDb. So I got like excited because I was like, ooh, wait, that's like 2 seasons right there.
And the cool thing too is that these episodes, they're not like an hour long. Like some of the Kenobi episodes were really long. These ones, they feel tight. They feel like perfectly paced. There's not a lot of fluff in them. Like they were just getting the story and going, and I love that.
Yeah. Now, with this, normally, like, I've written quotes in the synopsis, but I decided to write quotes outside of it this time because I kind of wanted to just, like, there are so many quotes. Like, there are just a lot of quotes in all these shows. This one, I wanted to, like, nitpick a little bit more. So, there are 2 quotes in this episode that stuck with me, actually kind of felt more like the theme for the episode. So, the first quote it's from the hostess when Cassian is first at that brothel. Mm-hmm. She says, "Nobody here gives their real name." Now, Cassian has been sneaky this entire time, hiding in the shadows, covering his tracks, the best he can do, you know, for his situation. And he has a large authoritarian figure trying to find him right now. And I felt like this quote was foreshadowing for just him and his life, but also just in general. Like, he's hiding the entire episode, trying to, you know, change what he did, or at least hide what he did. Mm-hmm. And I think that like nobody here gives their real name. Like that felt like a really nice theme for the episode.
I guess it's one of those things too where, you know, we got to remember this is not Cassian the master spy that we meet in Rogue One. This is Cassian the guy.
Yep.
So he's clearly got the skills. Like we see him developing and using the skills, but he's still new at this. Like if it wasn't his sister, he would have just said like, I'm just a guy looking for someone, you know? But he's so desperate to find his sister, he just outs himself immediately. Like, no, that's my sister. Like, if he had just said, like, oh, I'm looking for a Canary girl, that would have been it. That would have been just, you know, that would have been enough for him to go, oh, nope, she's gone. Okay, cool. But he's desperate. He really wants to find her.
Yep.
It leads to the situation that we find him in later in the episode.
Yeah. Now, the other quote that I really liked, I think, not only encompasses this episode, but also just this whole series and maybe his just whole life, to be honest. The quote is from the chief. And he says it's about the situation that these 2 guards got into, but it is actually, you know, I think it just encompasses the whole theme. It says, "This case appears to bear all the hallmarks of what I like to describe as horrible misadventure." And I just thought that this quote felt basically it felt like the entire beginning for the adventure that's ready to happen. While we know what happens to Cassian in the end, obviously, Rogue One, this bears foreshadowing to the adventure to come, or if you want to think about it, his misadventure to come.
I think that's an excellent quote. Now, I do think we have some questions that we have to ask about the episode as well.
Yeah.
And I think you have the first one here, so I'll let you go ahead and tell this one.
Yeah, I think the episode posed a lot of really great questions about Cassian growing up, how he ended up where he is now, and I will say we've watched the other episodes, but a lot of these questions they're still there. I mean, I'd like to know more about what it is that this corporation does. Just for my own sake of knowledge, that's kind of more just me. I want to know more about this planet. I want to know what the hell is going on. Like, we got brief little hints, but I want to know more. Usually we see like a more, like I said, severe poverty-stricken planet.
These guys all seem working class. It's kind of cool. It's a different kind of setup for them. They're not like, they don't seem to be struggling. They all seem to, because like if they're struggling, they'd be desperate. But these guys are just like, oh no, it's time for my shift. They all seem in good spirits. They don't seem miserable, you know? Like the guys on Tatooine during the Obi-Wan series, they look miserable.
Yeah, definitely.
But these guys are like, nope, going to work. All right, grab my, hey, because like you hear them when they're talking, you know, like grabbing their gloves, like, hey man, can you grab my glove? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Like if you guys are miserable, you're not doing that. You're looking out for yourself, and that's it.
Yeah, and like everybody just seems to kind of have their shit together more here, and also we do see a lot of ship parts like everywhere, literally everywhere. So I'd like to know if they have like a similar job as Cal Kestis did in the game.
That's the vibe I was getting. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking, because we see like Republic ships maybe more like tie-ins to Republic times. Like a lot of the parts and stuff, we see some Republic stuff.
Yeah, they seem to be in the same color scale as Republic. Like you see like the dark red, the dark, or would that be maroon, would you say?
Yeah, like an orange maroon as well.
Yeah.
But like what got me too is this takes place still fairly early in the Empire's time.
Yes.
Because Cassian was a kid during the Republic. So when that ship landed, or not landed, crash landed, it was during, you know, the Republic. So it hasn't been, I don't think, the guy doesn't look that old. Like, he doesn't look like he's over 33, 35, you know? So at least he doesn't look like that. Maybe he is, I don't know. But he's not that old. So it can't be that long of, you know, an Empire situation. No.
I think for me, my biggest question comes from where where the old canon is going to fit into the story that we have now, because I'll tell you right now, like this, I don't know if this lines up with the stuff that we've previously been told about Andor, because like we talked about in like episode 0, we talked about like how he grew up like throwing bottles at Republic tanks and things like that. I don't know if that's still going to be the same storyline, so we'll have to see.
Yeah.
In future episodes. But that's really my only question that I have at this time.
Makes sense. Yeah, overall, I mean, for final thoughts, I think this episode did a really great job of the theme of hiding and sneaking around, kind of what he's going to end up doing, as well as portraying an all-watching authority figure that isn't the Empire. And that, for me, I liked, because the Empire is... They're great, right? Well, the Empire's shit, but the Empire, like, they're a great villain. But I mean, okay, I've been around this for years now. I like that it's not the Empire, it's just some corpo assholes that are just, you know, asserting this weird authority that they have. They're not even like, they're not like real police. They're not. It's a security team. Like, they're just a security force. Obviously, they're very advanced and they're watching over planets and all this other shit. But like, it's nice that it's a completely different entity figure.
Well, and to that point as well, the corporation that we're seeing in the show clearly has a lot more oversight from the Empire than any corporation did under the Republic or the Separatists. You know, when Palpatine took over, you see it in the Clone Wars, he made sure that by the end of the Clone Wars, he was in charge of everything. Like, the government was controlling all aspects of private industry. They had the banks under their control. You know, they had any corporations that were fighting in the Separatist Alliance were then subjugated by the Empire. So, like, these guys are like, hey, we answer to the Empire. Like, if we do if we let them know that like crime is slipping, they're going to come down hard on us as well as the criminals.
Yeah.
You know, and I think Karn didn't really get that. It was like, hey, listen, this could be bad for all of us. You know, Karn's like, well, I want to prove that I'm good enough. And I'm thinking that's because he was rejected by the Empire. I really do think that
That is definitely kind of the vibe I got too. I think you're right on that one.
Because he's like,
we'll see on that.
Yeah, we'll see. But I'm thinking that because like I don't think he understands that the show is doing a great job of showing that they are all just cogs in a machine, and like they are just small replaceable parts. Like these guys don't even care. The inspector doesn't care that 2 people died. He's like, whatever. You know, the guys go, hey, 2 people died, and it's like, it doesn't really matter. There's so many of us. It's like, no.
Yeah,
it matters.
That's the mentality. Yeah.
Which I love that.
And also, I mean, the chief even comments on his uniform. He's like, did you alter your uniform? He's like, oh, I had it tailored and I did, I added some pockets and all this. And like, he wears it like an Empire wannabe.
Yes.
And while everybody else's is just a little loose and kind of, they're chilling. They're wearing a uniform. They're working. They're doing their thing. But he's like, he walks
he's
proper.
Wearing it military style.
Yeah, he clearly takes it a lot more seriously.
Which I love that.
Ugh. Good villain. I'll take it.
Great setup.
And with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at lore_party. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.